Listen up. Stop what you are doing, because a massive update just broke in the Lynette hooker disappearance, and it turns the official narrative completely upside down. If you think you know this story, forget about it, because federal investigators just made a move that changes everything. The Coast Guard did not just impound Brian Hooker's 46-foot yacht, Soulmate. They seized it, towed it 100 miles south to Fort Lauderdale, wrapped it tight, and locked it down as an active crime scene for a future trial. All those excuses from Brian about howling winds, a broken oar, and losing his wife to a violent sea, this massive federal escalation proves that detectives think it is pure fiction. They are treating that yacht like a murder weapon, protecting the microscopic evidence before a formal indictment drops. Before we examine the evidence, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and do not skip a single second, because missing a detail will leave you totally in the dark. Let us get started. The Fed's sudden move to seize that 46-foot yacht tells us one crucial thing. Investigators are no longer waiting around for Brian Hooker to tell the truth. By dragging that massive vessel 100 miles south, from Fort Pierce to a secure lot in Fort Lauderdale, investigators have officially transformed this missing person case into a high-stakes forensic quarantine. They are completely shrink-wrapping the yacht to protect every single microscopic fiber, fingerprint, and trace fluid from the brutal Florida weather. They are treating this luxury boat like a secured crime scene, keeping it perfectly preserved for an upcoming criminal trial. Brian has not been hit with any formal charges yet, but this major federal escalation is a clear signal that prosecutors are quietly putting together a solid murder case behind closed doors to secure an indictment. The timeline Brian provided to the police is already falling apart under intense scrutiny. He claims that on April 4th, his wife Lynette just bounced out of the back of their small dinghy while they were heading back to their yacht from the Abaco Inn. He told the officers that the wind was howling. The waves were crashing at 2 to 4 feet, and the current was too violent for him to save her. But local business owners and detectives are not buying his story. Photos taken at Aunt Pat's Bay at the exact minute Brian says chaos broke loose show the water looking like a perfectly calm sheet of glass. There were absolutely no crashing waves. Security footage from the nearby Firefly Inn shows other small boats moving around without any trouble in calm, shallow water. This means Brian's terrifying storm tale is a total lie, leaving a massive hole in his alibi. What makes this look even worse is his strange behavior during those critical hours right after his wife disappeared. While local volunteers scrambled in the pitch black to find Lynette, Brian sat completely detached while local search parties risked their lives scanning the dark waves. Brian Hooker was spotted sitting, just lounging at the local conch inn, doing absolutely nothing to locate his missing wife. He never boarded the search boats. He never paced the shoreline, and he never even bothered to scan the horizon. A local resident, Jim Todd, saw him sitting there and handed him direct numbers to rent a private boat immediately, so he could go out and search for Lynette himself. Brian played the part, took the numbers down, and pretended he wanted to help. But when Jim Todd followed up, he discovered Brian had not made a single call. He never rented that boat. He never even touched the water. It was a cold, calculated performance to play the grieving husband. For anyone who was watching, and then comes the absolute most chilling part of his timeline. By his own official confession, Brian washed ashore at Marsh Harbor Boatyard at 4 in the morning on Easter Sunday, supposedly after drifting helplessly for 9 agonizing hours. If you had just lost your wife in the deep ocean, your immediate instinct would be to scream for help or call her family in sheer panic. But Brian did no such thing. He had a working cell phone right in his pocket, yet he never called Lynette's daughter, Carly. And he didn't alert her mother, Darlene. Instead, he remained completely silent for 14 solid hours.
When detectives later demanded to know why he never used his phone to call for rescue, Brian looked them straight in the eye and offered a ridiculous excuse. He claimed he couldn't call anyone because his phone lacked a local SIM card. But here is the ultimate sickening betrayal. Brian is no ordinary guy. He is a veteran U.S. Marine and a longtime AT&T telephone installation technician. He spent his entire career wiring communications networks and working as a certified technology expert. He knew exactly how mobile networks operate. As an experienced telecom expert, Brian knew very well that any mobile phone can bypass a missing SIM card and connect directly to local emergency services. The screen literally flashes the words, "Emergency calls only," which means he actively chose silence while his wife drifted lost at sea. That 14-hour radio silence finally shattered on Sunday evening. But it wasn't because he suddenly felt guilty. At 5:51 p.m., the Royal Bahamian Police Force derailed his plans by releasing a public press statement detailing the missing American tourist. Within minutes of that public broadcast hitting the media, a panicked Brian finally dialed Lynette's mother, Darlene. This wasn't a call of love or desperation. He called because his hand was forced, knowing her family would spot the news online anyway. This calculated move showed an intense consciousness of guilt, leaving local detectives convinced he was managing a cover-up. Interestingly, his sister somehow booked emergency flights and landed in the Bahamas less than 48 hours after the disappearance to clear out his belongings, while Lynette's own daughter was kept completely in the dark. News cameras already captured Brian's sister walking beside him through Marsh Harbor as he clutched a mysterious yellow dry bag. This identical yellow bag was the precise item he held when he first stumbled onto the boatyard docks at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, local search teams are openly questioning how a man who allegedly survived a terrifying, chaotic shipwreck managed to keep that single dry bag completely safe while losing his wife and heavy wooden oars. Even the formal police press release highlights the total confusion surrounding Brian's story.
First responders noted that Brian claimed he departed Hopetown for Elbow Cay.
Yet the truth is that Brian and Lynette already lived on Elbow Cay, staying right at the popular Abaco Inn. This geographic error proves the responding officers were completely unfamiliar with those local waters, giving Brian a huge window to exploit their confusion. He maintains he tried to paddle straight toward his drowning wife, but one of his thick wooden oars conveniently snapped loose from its metal pin and drifted into the ocean.
However, local experts point out that the water where his dinghy supposedly failed
was remarkably shallow, averaging only 3 to 5 feet deep. A trained former United States Marine could have easily stepped right out, stood firmly on the shallow sandbar, and pulled his wife to safety instead of watching her drift away. Instead, Brian claims he drifted 4 miles across the open bay for 9 long hours until he randomly washed up at the Marsh Harbor boatyard. Local detective Nathan went straight to that muddy shore, where Brian allegedly landed, testing the physical reality of his story. That terrain is an absolute nightmare, packed with thick, tangled mangroves, jagged limestone cliffs, and deep hidden ravines overflowing with thick black mud. It is physically impossible for anyone to cross that treacherous swamp at 4 o'clock in the morning without getting entirely covered in black sludge. Yet when Brian stepped into the bright lights of the secure boatyard, his clothes were remarkably clean, completely shattering his survival story. Even more suspicious, Nathan discovered a stray hat hidden deep in those isolated sludge pools that matched the exact gear Brian wore that very weekend. Federal agents from the elite Coast Guard Investigative Service are now treating those muddy fields as a primary dumping ground for key physical evidence. They suspect Brian deliberately used the cover of total darkness to hide the truth
before fabricating his entire timeline.
The trap is closing fast around him, and a formal murder indictment is
Now just a matter of when, not if.